The first sign of war was not a roar, but silence. A deep, unnatural silence that spread across the Pride Lands like a shadow, swallowing the songs of birds and the whispers of grass. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. Every creature felt it, a tightening in the chest, a warning that something ancient and terrible was about to awaken. The Pride Lands had known conflict before, but never like this. This was a war that would decide who truly deserved to rule the circle of life. At the heart of the land, the true king stood upon the high rock, watching the horizon burn red beneath the rising sun. His eyes carried the weight of generations, kings who ruled not through fear, but through balance and responsibility. Below him, the Pride Lands stretched wide, wounded and restless. Hunting grounds had been crossed, borders ignored, and whispers of rebellion had grown into threats. The land itself cried for a decision. Across the plains, another king gathered his forces. His mane was dark, his gaze sharp with hunger. He believed the Pride Lands had grown weak under gentle rule. To mercy was a flaw, balance, a lie told by those afraid of power. He promised strength, endless food, and dominance over every corner of the land. Many followed him, drawn by fear or ambition, unaware of the destruction that followed his path. The first clash came without warning. A single roar shattered the silence, echoing across stone and sky. Lions surged forward, dust exploding beneath their paws. The ground trembled as bodies collided, claws flashing, fangs snapping. The Pride Lands became a battlefield in an instant, the air thick with rage, fear, and destiny. The true king fought at the front, not hidden behind his pride, but among them. His movements were precise, controlled, guided by instincts sharpened through years of leadership. He defended the young, pulled the wounded from danger, and struck only when necessary. Every action carried purpose. Every roar was a command born of trust, not terror. The rival king charged like a storm. His attacks were wild and brutal, fueled by raw power and unchecked fury, tore through defenders without hesitation, caring little for who stood beside him. To him, victory justified everything. The Pride Lands would kneel or they would break. As the battle spread, chaos ruled. Dust clouds swallowed the sun. The cries of the injured mixed with the thunder of combat. Hyenas lurked at the edges, waiting for weakness. Birds circled overhead, silent witnesses to the fall of balance. The circle of life trembled with every blow. Young lions tasted battle for the first time. Some froze, fear locking their limbs. Others found strength they never knew they possessed. Every choice mattered. Every step forward or backward shaped the future. This was no longer just a fight between kings. It was a test of hearts. The rival king pushed deeper into the battlefield, cutting a path toward the true king. He knew that the war would end when only one of them remained standing. His roar split the air, filled with challenge and hatred. He wanted the throne, the land, and the legacy to bear his name alone, too. King met his advance calmly. He felt the pain of the land beneath his paws, every broken stone a reminder of what was at stake. He remembered the words of the elders, teaching that a king's strength lies not in domination, but in protection. With each breath, he prepared for the confrontation that would decide everything. When the two kings finally collided, the impact shook the ground. Power met purpose in a violent clash that sent shockwaves across the plains. They struck, separated, and struck again, neither willing to yield. Around them, the fighting slowed, as if the world itself recognized the moment. The rival king taunted with every blow, mocking the idea of balance, calling it weakness. He claimed the circle of life was a chain meant to be broken. The true king answered with resilience, rising each time he fell, driven by responsibility rather than pride. Blood stained the dust, muscles burned, Still, they fought. Each clash was more than physical. It was a collision of beliefs, of futures, of what the Pride Lands would become. The rival king fought with fury, but his movements grew reckless. Rage clouded his judgment. The true king fought with patience, waiting, observing, conserving strength. He understood that brute force fades, but purpose endures. The battle shifted toward the great stone ridge overlooking the plains. The ground there was uneven, cracked by time and pressure. Each step was dangerous. The rival king pressed forward, determined to end it. 2. The true king allowed himself to be driven back, calculating every move. Below them, the pride watched in fear and awe. Cubs clung to their mothers. Elders lowered their heads. Every creature understood that this fight would decide the fate of the Pride Lands. The rival king lunged. Claws extended, teeth bared in a roar filled with rage. The true king dodged, countered, and struck with controlled force. The rival king stumbled, catching himself at the edge of the ridge. For a moment, fear flashed in his eyes. The true king stood tall. He could end it now. One push, one final strike, and the war would be over. The land seemed to hold its breath, but the true king hesitated. Not out of weakness, but out of understanding. Shet. He knew that ruling through fear would poison the Pride Lands just as deeply as defeat. Leadership was not about destroying an enemy, but about restoring balance. The rival king took advantage of the pause, attacking again with desperation. Their bodies collided once more, rolling dangerously close to the edge. Stone cracked beneath them. Dust poured into the air. With a final surge of strength, the true king broke free, forcing the rival king back. The rival king slipped, struggling to regain footing. His roar echoed, filled with rage and regret. Then it happened. The stone gave way. The rival king fell, his roar fading as he disappeared into the shadows below. Silence followed. Heavy. Absolute. The battlefield froze. Slowly, the fighting stopped. Lions lowered their claws. Dust settled. The war was over. The true king stood alone on the ridge, battered and bleeding, but unbroken. The sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the Pride Lands. The circle of life had endured. One by one, the lions bowed their heads. Not in fear, but in recognition. Zalan exhaled, as if releasing a burden carried for too long. The true king descended from the ridge and walked among his pride. He tended to the wounded, honored the fallen, and comforted the frightened. He did not celebrate. He understood the cost of victory. As night fell, the stars appeared above the Pride Lands, watching silently. The true king lifted his head and roared. His roar was not a challenge. It was a promise. A promise that the land would heal. A promise that balance would be protected. And as the echo faded into the darkness, the Pride Lands remembered that even in war, the circle of life could survive. If guided by a king who understood its true meaning, the dawn, after the war, arrived slowly, as if the sun itself feared what it might reveal. Light crept across the Pride Lands, touching broken ground, fallen stones, and the silent banners of those who had fought for different visions of the same land. The air carried the scent of dust and blood, but beneath it was something new, something fragile. The first breath of peace struggling to exist. Sui. The true king moved through the battlefield with heavy steps. Every mark on the earth told a story. A place where young lions had stood their ground for the first time. A ridge where elders had fought despite aching limbs. A shallow stream stained dark, now beginning to run clear again. He felt the weight of every loss settle in his chest, knowing that victory did not erase pain, It only gave it meaning. Stopped beside the fallen, lowering his head in respect. These were not just warriors, they were guardians of the circle of life, whether they had realized it or not. Even those who had followed the rival king had believed they were fighting for survival. The true king understood this, and it deepened his resolve to lead with wisdom rather than pride. The pride gathered, silence ruled. No cheers followed the end of the war. No celebration rose from the plains. Instead, there was reflection. Lions stood shoulder to shoulder, some wounded, some exhausted, all changed. The war had stripped away illusions and revealed the truth of leadership to every witness. The true king spoke softly, yet his voice carried across the open land. He reminded them that the circle of life did not belong to one king alone. It belonged to every creature that walked, flew, or crawled across the Pride Lands. The war had tested them, but it had also shown them the cost of imbalance. His words were not commands. They were commitments. Far from the battlefield, at the base of the broken ridge, the rival king lay among stone and shadow. He was alive, battered and weak, but alive. Each breath burned, each movement sent pain through his body. As consciousness returned, so did memory. The battle, the fall. The moment when power failed him. For the first time, he did not feel rage. He felt emptiness. The throne he had chased meant nothing now. His ambition had led him here, broken and alone, listening to the distant sounds of life continuing without him. The Pride Lands had not fallen with him. They had endured. Days passed. Healing began slowly. The true king oversaw the rebuilding of balance. Hunting grounds were restored, borders redefined, and lessons shared. He encouraged cooperation rather than dominance, reminding the pride that strength multiplied when shared. Cubs listened closely, absorbing the story of the war not as a tale of glory, but as a warning etched into memory. Rain came, gentle at first, then steady. It washed away blood and dust, feeding the thirsty land. Grass pushed through cracked earth, stubborn and hopeful. The Pride Lands responded to balance like a living being, finally allowed to breathe again. The rival king, weakened but alive, began to move. He dragged himself from shadow to shadow, driven not by hunger for power, but by a need to understand. He saw the land healing without him, and the truth struck harder than any blow. The circle of life did not need a ruler who ruled through fear. It needed guardians who listened. Eventually, he reached the border of the Pride Lands. He stopped there, watching from a distance as the pride thrived. Cubs played, lions rested beneath trees. Balance had returned. He could cross the border, challenge again, but the thought felt hollow. The war had ended, and with it, the king he once believed himself to be. One evening, as the sun sank low, the true king sensed a presence. He turned to see the rival king standing at the edge of the plains, not advancing, not retreating. They locked eyes across the distance, not as enemies, but as survivors of the same storm. The rival king lowered his head. No roar followed. No challenge. Only acknowledgement. He had lost more than a battle. He had lost the illusion that power alone defined destiny. The true king held his gaze, understanding the weight of that realization. Without words, the rival king turned away and disappeared beyond the horizon. You would not return as a conqueror. His path now led elsewhere, shaped by lessons learned too late, but learned nonetheless. Seasons changed. Time softened wounds. The war became a story told beneath the stars. Elders spoke of the silence before the first roar, of the clash that shook the land, and of the king who chose balance when destruction was within reach. Cubs listened wide-eyed, learning what it meant to protect rather than dominate. The true king grew older, his mane marked by time, but his strength remained steady. He never forgot the war, nor did he let it define him. Instead, he used it as a compass, guiding every decision with the memory of how close the Pride Lands had come to breaking. On quiet nights, he would stand atop the high rock and look out across the plains. Sir. The wind carried familiar sounds now, birds calling, grass whispering, life moving as it should. Each time he roared, it was not a declaration of power, but a reminder of responsibility. Far beyond the Pride Lands, the rival king found his own place in the world. He protected distant territories, not as a ruler, but as a guardian. He learned to listen to the land, to respect balance, to serve rather than command. Though history would remember him as a challenger, his future was shaped by humility. Years later, when the true king's final roar echoed across the Pride Lands, it was met not with fear, but with understanding. The circle of life continued unbroken. A new generation stood ready, guided by lessons forged in war and preserved through wisdom. The Pride Lands thrived once more, not because a war had been won, but because balance had been chosen. And so the story endured, a reminder passed from one generation to the next, that the greatest battles are not won by claws and fangs alone, but by the courage to protect what matters most. The War of the Pride Lands became legend, a tale of silence, of thunder, of loss, and of hope. A story that whispered across the grass with every passing wind, reminding all who heard it that destiny is never decided by strength alone, but by the heart of those who choose to guard the circle of life.